Hi guys, Charlie Briggs here. The purpose of this video is to help you figure out what you need to set up your own electric and or solar powered boat. My solar powered boat that I set up for my family has been so much fun. We've really enjoyed it the last 2 summer holiday seasons here in France. It hasn't been too expensive. It's worked really well, really flawlessly. I did have to spend quite a few hours online researching everything before I was able to do this, and so the purpose of this video is to save you all that time and just arm you with all the knowledge you need to go out and do it. So I hope you find this very useful, and let's get to it. So in terms of what you'll need, there are essentially 6 items. First is your electric trolling motor, and then there's a deep cycle marine battery, solar panel charge controller, multimeter to check the voltage of your battery, and a battery smart charger. You can go for any boat you can get your hands on. You can make any boat electric. It could be an old catamaran, it could be an old sailboat like this one, 50 years old, we got very cheap. Or it could be a more modern GRP plastic design. It could be a very old wooden clinker built boat, whatever really. The key thing you need is a solid motor mount or transom. That's the bit the motor attaches to securely. You can see here this boat's got a very good transom. If you go for something like an inflatable, I mean maybe you live in an apartment and you have no space to park the boat outside or in a garage, that's fine, you can go for a cheap inflatable boat. Just make sure that it has a motor mount. If it doesn't, there are many YouTube tutorials on how you can make your own motor mount to fix a motor to. So you really do have a lot of choice in terms of your boat. So in terms of the motor, you've got lots of choice. The key word you're looking for is trolling motor. I've got 2 examples to show you here. This smaller model represents the lower end of thrust, 24 pound thrust motor. They'll all be 12 volt until you start to get really powerful. This is more of a mid-range motor, 54 pounds of thrust, perfect for this size of boat. If you're going to be motoring something as small as a kayak or a very small dinghy, something like 24 pound thrust or 30 something pound thrust motor would be ideal. But as soon as you start to get to a bigger boat like this multi-person carrying dinghy, you're going to want something in the 40s or 50s pounds of thrust range, like this motor here. They all attach in a very similar way, you can see here, to the transom or motor mount. Don't weigh much at all. I mean, this smaller 24 pound thrust motor, you know, it's about 5 kilograms ish, really quite light. Again, the bigger motor, heavier, but still very manageable. Very low maintenance. I really like these motors. It's very simple to connect the motors to the battery. Okay, on the smaller motors you can often find crocodile clips like this. They simply clip straight onto the terminals of the battery. And another type you can see like this on a bigger motor. These are sort of spade circular connectors, and those go onto the narrower post battery terminals, and you can even screw down on top of the connectors a nut like this just to get a really secure connection. So when you choose your motor, just make sure that you're thinking about how it's going to connect to the battery that you choose. Remember, you can of course cut the ends and solder on different connectors if you have that ability. In terms of price, this smaller motor cost me £90 and the bigger motor cost me £165. In this particular case I'm using Jarvis Watersnake motors, both of them Australian company, made in China, but very good build quality, and they are salt water capable, so you can use these in the sea, no problem. So talking about the battery now, the key thing is what you're after is a deep cycle marine battery. These look like car batteries, but they are different. Okay, unlike a car battery, these are designed to provide a fairly small number of amps for a very long period of time, as opposed to a car battery, which gives a burst, very high amps, for a very short period of time. Now this battery here cost me about £80, something like that. It's an SLA battery, sealed lead acid. Okay, it's about the cheapest grade of battery you can get for this job. If you put a bit more money in, you can start to get lighter batteries with the same amount of energy storage, such as gel batteries, and eventually you can get even lithium batteries. But to keep the price down, just go for a simple sealed lead acid battery. That's my recommendation. Very low maintenance, very little to do, very easy to use. This battery weighs about 19 kilograms and it has an 86 amp hour capacity. So this is a 54 pounds of thrust motor, and as a general rule of thumb with motors, for every pound of thrust they draw approximately 1 amp. Okay, so let's say that takes about 55 amps of draw at maximum power. This battery's capacity is 86 amp hours. What that means is that for 1 hour that can give 86 amps constant, and then it will be dead. In reality, we never fully discharge these batteries, they don't like it. So on paper, this motor being used with this battery could give a little over an hour before completely depleting the battery on full power. But again, we wouldn't want to fully deplete the battery. So this is a digital multimeter, and this allows you to check up on the readings on the battery and just check what voltage the battery is reading at any given time. Very useful bit of kit, and really kind of a fuel gauge to see how much is left in the battery. So I really recommend getting one of these. They're not very expensive. So here's a battery charger. This is a smart charger, but again, not too expensive, very essential to buy. Okay, they really sort of look after your battery and maintain them on season and off season. Okay, it's all you need to look after your battery. It's a multi-stage charger, so first it does bulk charge to it pumps in 3.8 amps into the battery and brings it up. After about 6 hours or so, it'll bring a depleted battery up to near enough full, and then it lowers it down to a trickle until it's fully charged, and then eventually it does what's called float charge, where it puts in a very low current just to keep the battery topped up. Because what you want to do with these deep cycle batteries is you don't want them to be discharged in a state of discharge, that is not fully charged, for any long period of time, because that creates sulfation, which degrades the battery. What you want to try and do then is connect your charger to the battery off season every week or so, just to make sure that it's absolutely topped up. The charger will only run for about a minute or so to do that. It won't take long. But even a slightly discharged battery can develop that degradation if you let it sit like that. So the particular brand of charger I've bought is Streetwize. I got it off Amazon. Very cheap. It's maybe about 20-25 pounds or something. It just runs off the mains like that. Then you just want to connect up your terminals. Negative there, positive here. And then you simply press the button mode and put it onto the symbol with the car. And then you just leave it. It's fully automated smart charger, very useful. You don't want to leave it connected all year round, but like I said earlier, just connect it for a minute or so every week or whatever, just to make sure that it's topped up all the time for maximum health. If you've been out boating and you've brought the battery down to its lowest safe point and you connect this up, you can expect it to charge for about 8 hours roughly to bring it all the way back up. Now this is a 50 watt solar panel by AKT Solar, a British based company. As you can see, not too big. At peak ability, okay, good sun, good angle, optimum conditions, it can provide I believe 2.8 amps. Okay, now solar panel should come with what's called a solar charge controller. Looks like this, and that takes that sort of manages the energy from the solar panel, and that gets then sent via crocodile clips to the battery terminals. There is a chance that, like me, you might need to add connectors to the cable that goes from the charge controller to the solar panel. Okay, that will involve a bit of soldering. If you haven't soldered before, don't worry. There are many tutorials on YouTube about how to do it, and getting a soldering iron and the solder won't cost much at all. The connector I used here is a XT60 connector for model aeroplanes from hobbyking.com. But considering the low low current from the panel, you can use pretty much any connector out there to do the job. Just solder them on, and it'll make that connection fine between panel and charge controller. And like I said before, from the charge controller to the battery is usually crocodile clips. In terms of how you wire things with the charge controller, you want to make sure that your leads to the solar panel are coming out from the clearly marked solar panel terminals, and then you have your other leads coming from the battery terminals over to the battery. You do not want to use the load terminals on the charge controller for the motor, because the load terminals from the charge controller are really for low amperage uses, things like I don't know, lighting or something that doesn't demand too much power. The motor pulls quite a lot of amps, okay, so you're going to want to wire that directly from the battery. And do you need a battery with two terminals like I have? Not really. I find it a bit more, maybe a bit more user-friendly, but you know, single terminals are absolutely fine. You can connect both the panel and the motor to the same terminals. I've even seen people connecting the crocodile clips from one to the crocodile clips of the other, which then go over the terminal, and that seems to also work okay. So let's go into a bit more detail about the battery. So the battery I bought, you can see here, is a Lucas XV Supreme 86 amp hour marine or leisure deep cycle battery. This particular battery is rated to a 70% DOD, depth of discharge. That's how much energy you can safely take from the battery before it starts to get damaged. Okay, so that's the lowest point you can go with the battery, 70% energy use. So that's about 60 amp hours. Okay, so let's say with an 86 amp hour battery, you've safely got 60 amp hours of it which are available. The motor that I've got there, the bigger motor, 54 pounds of thrust, has 5 different speed settings. Let's say you average using speed 3. That'll take about 25 amps. That means this battery can run for 2 hours 24 minutes at an average of 25 amps. With the solar panel, the panel is charging the battery whether you're using the motor or not. Okay, so let's say the solar panel is rated up to 2.8 amps maximum, but let's say on a good day, okay, a conservative estimate is giving you 2.5 amps. That means that can give an 11% range boost if the motor is being used all the time, average speed 3. Okay, because it's contributing 2.5 amps with the motor drawing on average 25 amps. That's the contribution it gives. So using a small solar panel like this 50 watt one, it's basically a range booster. I mean, yeah, of course, if you left the boat in the sun, motor off for a long enough time, it would eventually recharge the battery, but that would take at least a day. So the question you want to ask yourself is, do you want the boat to be just electric with a motor and a battery, or do you want to have a small solar panel just to boost the range a bit, like I've got here? Or do you want the setup to have a big enough solar panel to actually run the boat purely off the sun? Now that is possible. So with this last option, if you had a much bigger panel, this is 50 watts, let's say you had 200 watt solar panel, that would give you at least 10 amps. Now if the motor's on speed 1, that could also be taking about 10 amps. So you can see in that situation, with good sun, the panel could be actually charging the battery as much as it's being discharged by the motor, meaning it's running basically just off the sun. The setup will be exactly the same as I've got here in that case. Now in that last situation where you've got 200 watts of solar panel, yeah, you could have a shade, a roof over the boat, which could take all of that area of solar panel, or you could have lots of it, say, hanging off. But yeah, the bottom line is that would take up a lot of area. Now let me take you through some more detail involving the battery and the multimeter. To check the voltage of the battery, you want to make sure that your black lead in the multimeter is connected to COM, and your red lead is connected to the one which shows you the voltage symbol, the V. Then it's simply a case of putting the positive prong on the positive terminal and the negative prong on the negative terminal. What you want to do is turn the switch on the multimeter to within the voltage range, voltage DC, direct current, not alternating current. You want to set it to the closest number which is above the voltage of the battery. Okay, so the battery is 12 volts. The closest number to 12, which is higher than 12, is 20. So there it is. So let's have a look here. Putting the prongs on. Okay. My multimeter is now reading 13.8 volts. And that's a very typical voltage for a fully charged battery, which has been left alone for a while. Okay, that's the resting voltage. You have to pay attention here, because when you're taking a reading, what you really want to know is the resting voltage, and that means that the battery has sat there for a while, at least, ideally at least an hour, but in practice maybe you can get away with 15 minutes, where there's been no discharge and no charge on the battery. Okay, even if it's being on float charge on the charger might be putting a tiny bit of current in, which will make the voltage appear higher than the resting voltage would be. And if you're using the boat underway, the motor's being used, the motor's drawing current, the voltage of the battery will appear much lower, okay, than the resting voltage, the true voltage. And if you stop the boat, you're not drawing anything from the motor, it'll take time for the voltage to recover from under load back up to the resting voltage. Like I said before, you're going to have to wait at least 15 minutes to get a really good reading there. So do keep this in mind. So the next question is, how much can you discharge your battery? These may be 12 volt batteries, but actually when they're fully charged, as we've seen, resting voltage there, they're around the upper 13 volt range. Okay, 12 volts, if they're reading 12 volts resting voltage, that means they're near enough depleted. A battery like this, which has a 70% depth of discharge rating, means that it can be brought down to just under 11.8 volts resting. Okay, that's what you want to consider dead. Okay, it's a healthy lowest discharge level for this battery. If you're not sure, as a general rule of thumb, try to not discharge the average sealed lead acid battery to below about 11.9 volts resting. Okay, that's just to be very safe and to make sure the battery is kept very healthy. So how can you tell just how much your solar panel is contributing to your boat powering? You can use your multimeter in amp mode to see how many amps the panel is providing, but this can be a bit risky and you can end up damaging your multimeter, something I've done. I destroyed a previous one by wiring that up incorrectly. I'm no expert. So a safer way to do it is simply to have somebody cover up your solar panel with a towel or something when everything's set up and you're in the water, and you can see what voltage the battery is reading before and after the solar panel's covered. And you can do this when the motor's running or not running, whatever. What you're looking for is a difference in voltage, okay, as the panel is shaded and unshaded. And then that'll show you that it's really working and it's contributing amps to the whole setup. Covering it up instantly drops to 13.38 to 37. Okay, and uncover. Bounces up to 13.40 to 13.41. Oh, okay, settled down on 13.40. Can you cover up again? Drop down to Is that completely covered? Yep.
Yep.
Okay, drop down to 13.38 to 13.37. Well guys, I hope you've enjoyed my video. I hope you found it useful as well. You know, go for it. If you want to try an electric boat, just do it. Whether you get an old sailing boat like ours, or a really cheap inflatable that you buy online or whatever, with this electric setup you can make it work. So I wish you the best of luck, and please leave a comment below if you've got any more questions, or if you just want to comment on the video, please do, and I will see you in the next video. Bye bye.
Oh, now I've gone blind again. Oh well, just tell me left or right, I know what to do.